Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Mm.
where we like to really get into the nitty-gritty of research and turn it into something you can actually use.
Yeah.
So today we are diving deep into a really fascinating book,
Mm-hmm.
48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
you might think of this as like Machiavelli for the modern entrepreneur.
Right.
And for
Sure.
we're not saying we want you to be ruthless out there,
No.
but this book really gives you a look at
Yeah.
how power works,
Mm.
the dynamics.
Mm-mm.
And that's something that I think every new entrepreneur really needs to understand.
Absolutely.
So like it's almost like a playbook for some of these unwritten rules of the business world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tough world out there.
It is a tough world.
And this is, like you said, a playbook. It can be a little daunting,
Yeah.
but it's also, like you said, incredibly empowering once you start to understand it.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit. Imagine you're a new entrepreneur, you've got this like killer idea, but you're not really sure like how to play the game, how to navigate it all.
Right.
One of the first things Greene talks about is mastering the psychology of power.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
a big part of that is keeping your emotions in check,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with setbacks.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, just starting out, it was so easy to get caught up in like the emotional roller coaster,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
all the highs and lows. But he really says, that can be your downfall.
It really can.
And he uses a really interesting example.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Count Victor Lustig?
I have. Fascinating guy.
This guy was a con man
Yeah.
who actually conned Al Capone.
I mean, that takes some guts, right?
Think about that. Like, he didn't use force. He used psychology. He used strategy.
Strategy and psychology, and like you said, guts.
So how did he do it?
Well, he understood that Capone, as tough as he was, also wanted to be seen as like an honorable guy, a generous guy.
Right.
So Lustig appealed to that.
So instead of like trying to out-muscle Capone, he outsmarted him.
Exactly.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It is, and I think, you mentioned it earlier, that calculated kindness.
Yes.
I think that's so powerful, and it's something that really resonated with me in the book.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive at first.
It does, right?
Like you wouldn't think, you want to be all tough.
Well, I think the big takeaway is that everyone, even the most powerful people,
Right.
have vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And sometimes showing a little vulnerability yourself can actually work to your advantage.
But it disarms people.
It does. It makes them lower their guard a little bit.
This makes me think about how important it is to like build the right team as a new entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
Because Greene talks about, avoiding those, what he calls infectors.
Yeah, the negative people.
The people who are just chronically unhappy and unstable. And he says that can really rub off on you, especially if you're just starting out.
Oh, yeah, especially when you're just starting out, you're so vulnerable.
So as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
how do you avoid these infectors? Like, how do you spot them?
Well, think of them as energy vampires.
Okay.
They drain your enthusiasm. They make you doubt yourself.
Oh, I've definitely met a few of those.
Right. I mean, they're the chronic complainers, always focusing on the negative.
Mm-hmm.
Or they thrive on drama,
Oh, yeah.
creating chaos wherever they go. And as an entrepreneur,
Right.
your time,
It's precious.
your energy, it's so precious. So you really have to be careful about who you let into your inner circle.
So look for people who like lift you up.
Yes.
People who challenge you,
in a good way.
but in a constructive way,
Yeah,
and share your vision.
exactly. You need that positive energy around you.
It's like building this positive ecosystem.
It is.
Okay, so you've got your emotions in check. You've built a great team.
Mhm.
What's next? Greene also talks about the idea of strategic deception and concealing your intentions.
Yeah.
Which is where it gets a little bit...
Controversial, little gray,
Right.
little bit gray.
Like how much deception is okay?
Well, I think the key is,
Yeah.
you don't have to lie,
Right.
but you don't have to reveal everything either.
Right.
It's like playing poker.
Okay.
If your opponents can read you, they have the advantage.
You got to keep them guessing a little bit.
Keep them guessing.
So how do you apply that? How does a new entrepreneur apply that ethically?
Well, he uses a great example, Otto von Bismarck,
Okay.
Prussian statesman. This
Mhm.
guy was a master at this. So, for example, he pretended to support a peace treaty
Okay.
while secretly maneuvering his country towards war.
Wow.
So he lulled his opponents into a false sense of security.
So how can a new entrepreneur, without, starting a war,
Right.
apply these principles?
Well, let's say you're negotiating a deal.
Okay.
You don't have to reveal your bottom line right away.
Okay.
Hold some cards back,
Right.
see how the other side reacts,
Test the water.
test the waters, create a little bit of mystery.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how these laws can be applied in a practical way.
Yeah.
But it's not just about being secretive, right?
Right.
Greene also talks about understanding power dynamics.
Yes, and I think that is so key for new entrepreneurs.
And one of the fundamental laws he discusses is
Never outshine the master.
never outshine the master.
It might seem obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
People violate this rule all the time.
So what does that mean, never outshine the master?
Well, he uses the story of Galileo, right? The astronomer
Yeah.
who, he had these incredible discoveries,
Mm-hmm.
but instead of boasting about them,
Right.
he presented his findings in a way that flattered his patrons,
Lord.
the Medicis.
Very powerful.
Very powerful family.
Yeah.
So he understood that people in power, they have egos.
Yeah.
And if you make them feel threatened, they're going to push back.
Right.
But if you make them feel smart,
Right.
if you make them feel like they're part of the discovery,
Yeah.
they're much more likely to support you.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just what you know.
No,
It's how you present it
it's how you frame it.
and how it benefits those in power.
It's all about making them feel like they're part of the win.
That's good advice.
And this applies to everybody.
Yeah.
Investors, mentors, partners.
So it's like you're playing chess,
Yes.
always thinking several moves ahead.
Several moves ahead. And
Oh,
sometimes
isn't
the
it?
best move,
Is to surrender.
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 What do you mean by that?
Well, it sounds counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But he argues that surrendering can actually be really powerful.
Okay.
It can buy you time.
Mm-hmm.
It can give you a chance to regroup and plot your counterattack.
Okay.
He gives the example of the Malians,
Okay.
who refused to surrender to the Athenians,
Uh,
and it didn't end well for them.
Pride and stubbornness
Yeah.
led to their downfall.
Okay, so how does a new entrepreneur surrender? What does that look like?
Okay, so let's say you're seeking funding
Mm-hmm.
and an investor demands more equity than you're comfortable with.
Right.
Instead of refusing outright,
Right.
you strategically surrender.
You appear to agree,
Appear to agree.
but then you're working other angles.
You negotiate other terms that give you more control.
So it's not about giving up, it's about choosing your battle.
Choosing your battles, exactly.
This reminds me of another law, finding each man's thumbscrew.
Ah, yes. Finding their weakness.
Right. He tells the story of Cardinal Richelieu, who gained control of King Louis XIII by exploiting the Queen Mother's need for attention.
Yeah, a little Machiavellian, but
It is, but it illustrates the point, right?
illustrates the point. You need to understand the people you're dealing with,
Yeah.
what motivates them, what scares them, what are their aspirations.
So as an entrepreneur, how do you do that without being, manipulative?
Well, it's not about exploiting people. Right.
It's about understanding them. It's
Yeah.
about building relationships, but it's also about, understanding their thumbscrews.
Right.
So you can influence them, persuade them,
Build stronger relationships.
build stronger relationships. That's the key.
This is all so insightful. It's like a crash course in...
Human psychology,
Yeah.
power dynamics.
But I gotta say,
Yeah.
some of these laws,
I know. They seem...
a little ruthless.
I do a little bit.
Well, I think it's important to remember,
Yeah.
this book is a study of power.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a moral guide.
Yeah.
So it's really up to each individual how they apply these principles.
So use this knowledge wisely and ethically.
Ethically, exactly.
All right. Well, this has been a really incredible start to our deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered so much, but there's still a lot more to explore.
Oh, yeah, we've only just scratched the surface.
We'll be right back after a quick break to talk about building a powerful reputation. Okay, so we talked about mastering your emotions and really understanding how power dynamics work.
Mm-hmm.
But what about, how you present yourself to the world?
Right.
Like your image,
Yeah, that's where your reputation comes in.
building that strong reputation.
Yeah, and Greene says that's essential, especially for a new entrepreneur. You're building your brand, you're just starting out.
Yeah.
That reputation is everything.
And he talks about how dangerous it is to let negativity or attacks damage that image.
Right.
And he uses P.T. Barnum as an example.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The showman.
Yeah, like the ultimate
He knew how to,
hype man.
how to manipulate public perception.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
He was a master storyteller.
He was a master storyteller. He knew how to get people talking, knew how to create a buzz.
So how does a new entrepreneur, we can't all create a circus.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. But I think the principle still applies.
Okay.
It's about understanding how to craft a narrative that captures people's imaginations. Think about the story you're telling with your brand.
Okay, so what makes you unique? What problem are you solving? Like, what are those values
Exactly.
you're communicating
Yeah, you got to have that compelling narrative.
that resonates with people?
It's about creating a brand identity that people connect with.
Yeah.
And remember, perception is reality.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be proactive in shaping how people see you and your brand.
So it's not just what you do.
No,
It's how you communicate it.
it's how you communicate it. It's the story you tell.
Greene actually goes a step further.
Yeah.
He talks about like recreating yourself.
Yeah.
He uses this really fascinating example of George Sand,
Oh, wow.
the French novelist,
Oh.
who adopted a male persona to break into the literary world.
Wow. So she completely reinvented herself.
Yeah, like how realistic is that for a new entrepreneur?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily about like changing your identity.
Right.
It's more about like crafting a public persona that
Mhm.
aligns with your brand,
Okay.
your goals. You're highlighting your strengths, presenting yourself in a way that inspires trust.
So it's like creating a personal brand.
It is, but it has to be authentic.
Right. It can't be fake.
Yeah, people can spot a phony,
Totally.
but that doesn't mean you can't be strategic about it.
Right. So you're emphasizing certain aspects of your personality
Exactly.
that fit with that brand.
Yeah, the aspects that are relevant to your brand.
So it comes back to that self-awareness,
Self-awareness is key.
knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses,
And playing to those strengths.
playing to those strengths.
And I think that's a great segue into what Greene talks about with symbols and these grand spectacles.
Yeah, like Cleopatra's dramatic entrance to captivate Caesar.
Exactly. So he's saying that creating these memorable experiences, even grand gestures, they can have a lasting impact.
So how does a new entrepreneur, I mean, we probably don't have the resources for like a grand entrance.
Yeah.
You know, like what could we do?
Well, it's not about the scale. It's about the thoughtfulness.
Okay.
Think about those small things you can do that create a memorable experience.
Okay.
It could be as simple as like a handwritten thank you note
Oh, yeah.
or a personalized gift.
Like going the extra mile,
Going the extra mile, it's about exceeding those expectations.
making people feel valued.
Yeah, and remember, word of mouth is still the most powerful marketing.
It is.
So don't underestimate those small touches.
All right. So we've got that strong reputation. What's next on our deep dive?
Well, let's talk about building those strategic alliances and cultivating influence.
Okay.
Greene really stresses the importance of having multiple sources of power.
And he uses the example of Cesar Borgia, who lost everything when his father, the Pope, died.
Oh, yeah.
Pretty dramatic example of why you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket.
It is. And as a new entrepreneur,
Yeah.
it's so tempting to rely on that one investor, that one partner.
Right.
But what happens if that relationship falls apart?
Yeah.
You need to diversify that power base.
So build a network.
Build a network, build a coalition of allies.
So how do you go about doing that?
Well, it starts with building genuine relationships,
Okay.
networking, attending industry events,
Mm-hmm.
connecting with people who share your vision.
And it's not just about what you can get from people.
No.
It's what you can offer them.
What you can offer, it's about those mutually beneficial partnerships.
Win-win.
Win-win, exactly.
Now, he does use the example of Cleopatra maneuvering her siblings
Right.
to solidify her own power.
Not exactly the most ethical example.
Not really a role model
Oh.
for ethical leadership.
But I think there's a lesson there.
Right.
It's about understanding those power dynamics,
Mm-hmm.
using your influence strategically, but you got to do it with integrity.
So being a savvy negotiator,
Yes.
knowing when to push, when to concede,
Mhm.
but not compromising those values.
Exactly. Your values are everything.
And Greene talks about the importance of making yourself indispensable.
Oh, yeah. Becoming that go-to person.
He uses the metaphor of becoming the spine
The spa.
of those in power.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, how do you do that?
Well, it's about becoming so valuable to your partners, your investors, your clients,
Mm-hmm.
that they can't imagine functioning without you.
Okay. So you build that reputation for excellence,
For excellence, delivering results,
being the go-to person.
being a go-to person, yeah.
So you build that track record of success.
Exactly. You prove your worth, you become an invaluable asset.
So you're building that foundation of trust.
Trust, expertise.
This is all so insightful,
Yeah.
but it also feels like a lot
Yeah,
to
it's
juggle
like
as a new entrepreneur.
it is, but
It's like you got to be this master strategist, psychologist.
you gotta wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
But remember, you don't have to master all these laws overnight.
You learn as you go.
It's a process.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another crucial aspect of power.
Okay.
Timing and mastering that art of patience.
Okay.
That's what we're going to be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about mastering those emotions, building alliances, crafting that narrative, but none of it really matters.
Right.
If you don't have the patience to see it through.
If you don't have the patience, I mean, especially in the startup world, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to move fast,
Right.
break things.
Yeah, you got to be quick.
You got to be quick.
But Greene reminds us,
sometimes
the most powerful move
is to wait.
He
tells this great story about this Roman general Sertorius who had to teach his troops about patience.
What did he do?
So he had these barbarian troops,
Okay.
right, who were very impatient and eager for action.
They wanted to go.
Yeah. So he takes this thin, weak stalk of grain.
Okay.
And then a thick, strong one. And he's like, all right, break this.
All right.
They snap the thin one, no problem.
Yeah.
The thick one, they're struggling.
Takes a little more effort.
Yeah. Then he takes a handful of the thin stalks.
Okay.
Bundles them together.
Okay.
And they can't break it.
Oh, wow.
So his point was, individually, you might be strong. You might be eager.
You can snap that thin stalk.
You can snap that stalk.
But together,
there's strength in numbers.
There's strength, but also knowing when to act.
Yeah.
Knowing when to wait for the right moment.
That's such a powerful metaphor.
It is.
For a new entrepreneur.
Especially for a new entrepreneur.
It's so easy to get caught up in that excitement.
Oh, yeah. You want to
just go.
Go. Put the pedal to the metal.
But you got to be strategic.
About
that timing.
Absolutely. And it's not just about when to launch a product or close a deal.
Right.
It's about, understanding those bigger trends. What Greene calls the spirit of the times.
And he uses that really interesting example of Joseph Fouché.
Oh, yeah.
Who managed to
thrive.
Not just survive, but thrive during the French Revolution.
I mean, talk about a chaotic time.
Talk about a time of upheaval.
Yeah. So how did he do it?
Yeah, how did he do that?
Well, he was a master at reading the political climate.
Okay.
He wasn't driven by ideology.
It was about survival.
It was about power. It was about survival.
Yeah.
He knew when to align himself with whoever was in power and when to distance himself
from those
who were falling out of favor.
Falling out.
So he was like a chameleon, adapting to that environment.
So he was always ahead of the curve. Wow. So how can a new entrepreneur develop that
foresight?
That foresight, yeah.
Well, I think it comes down to staying informed.
Okay.
Read those industry publications. Follow the thought leaders.
Go to conferences.
Network.
Talk to people.
Be a student of your industry.
Always
be learning.
Because things change so quickly.
And be adaptable.
Yeah. Be willing to pivot.
Even if it means abandoning an idea.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes new entrepreneurs make.
You get so married to that idea.
You get married to the idea and you're not seeing what's happening in the market.
And Greene talks about the dangers of acting rashly.
He does.
He uses the example of President Wilson getting involved.
In Mexico.
Which
had disastrous consequences.
It did not go well.
So
sometimes you just got to wait.
You got to wait.
Gather information.
Be patient.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about timing. We've talked about patience. What are some of the other key takeaways
from this book?
From 48 Laws of Power that our listeners can apply?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is just to really be a student of power dynamics.
Not just observe them, but analyze them.
Why are some people succeeding?
Why are some people succeeding?
Why are some failing?
What do they do?
What are those strategies?
What are those mistakes?
So it's like looking at the world
through a different lens.
Yeah. Yeah, and recognizing those power plays.
They're happening all the time.
Yeah, even in
everyday interactions.
Yeah, really small things.
And once you start to see those patterns, you can use them to your advantage.
Okay.
You can learn how to influence people, negotiate better, build stronger relationships.
Greene also talks a lot about mastering those emotions.
Yes, your emotions can really trip you up.
Yeah, he says that fear.
Fear, anger, they can cloud your judgment, lead to bad decisions.
Especially as an entrepreneur.
You're going to face a lot of setbacks.
You're going to have those ups and downs.
It's so easy to let those emotions get the best of you.
Yeah.
But you got to stay calm under pressure. You got to detach.
Develop that resilience.
That mental toughness.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
There's so much wisdom,
So much wisdom in Greene's book.
but I think it's important to emphasize.
Yeah.
It's not about being manipulative.
No.
It's not about being ruthless.
It's not about being a jerk.
It's about understanding those rules
Yes.
and using them strategically.
Using them strategically, but ethically.
Ethically to build a strong business
A sustainable business.
based on integrity.
Integrity. Yeah.
So to all of our listeners out there,
Yeah.
especially those of you who are just starting out
Yeah, those brave souls.
on your entrepreneurial journey,
It's a tough journey.
it is. I hope this deep dive
Yeah.
has given you some insight
Given you some tools.
into how power works.
It's a fascinating world.
It is, and we really encourage you to explore this book for yourself
Yeah.
and see how these laws
Can be applied to your specific situation.
yeah, see how they resonate with you.
There's so much to uncover.
And remember,
Knowledge is
that
power.
But
And
power without purpose is meaningless.
that's a good point.
So use your knowledge
To make a difference.
to make a difference, to create something positive.
Mm. All right, well, that is a fantastic note to end on.
It is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive
Absolutely.
into the fascinating and sometimes controversial world
Yes.
of 48 Laws of Power.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. Until next time,
Until next time.
keep learning, keep exploring,
And keep pushing those boundaries.
and keep pushing those boundaries.